Who would have guessed that when you play a video for someone telling them that everyone else hates you, there will be animosity and a lack of trust within that environment? I may be mischaracterizing the story a little bit, but here's what we have from Campus Reform. Study. STEM diversity efforts have unintended consequences. Female participants who viewed videos on gender bias in STEM felt decreased anticipated belonging and trust. Researchers warn women in STEM advocates about unintended negative outcomes. Let me just give you my thoughts on these types of these incidents, and then we'll read through the story. I have a story that you may have heard me tell before, but there was somebody at Occupy Wall Street, and he was about to go to a restaurant. He was going to go to the bathroom. He was going to Burger King, and this is a black guy. The white guy says, "Hey man, when you're over there, can you grab me a cheeseburger?" Black dude gets super angry, super pissed off, and starts saying like, "What, dude? You got a problem, bro? Like, what the fuck's your problem, man?" Storms off, all pissed off, and they're like, "Whoa, what the fuck?" The dude comes back later, and I ask him like, "What happened?" And he's like, "Could you believe the nerve of this guy? Like, telling me to go get him a cheeseburger?" And I was like, "I mean, the guy just asked you if you could get him food while you're at Burger King." And here's the thing, the dude was so like inundated with stories about racism and historical oppression and stuff. He said that it was racist for this guy to ask him to get him his food because of like the race dynamic there. And to me, I'm like, but people ask me to get them food all the time. You know, so what happens is he ends up internalizing this. He assumes the reason behind it is malicious. If you were going to show someone a video, like let's say there's a woman who wants to work in a STEM field, don't tell her anything. She'll just be like, okay, I'll go do it. But before she goes, if you say, hey, just so you know, men are all really sexist, they're going to treat you like crap, and it's going to be damn near impossible for you to get anywhere, now go work in STEM. What do you think they're going to think? They're going to be like, wow, everyone's out to get me. And then, unsurprisingly, decreased anticipated belonging and trust. Yeah, you're not going to feel like you fit in if people keep telling you that everyone hates you or they're biased against you, instead of being like, hey, we're all people, let's be friends. You know, let's be friends with each other while we work. So let's see what's up. An Indiana University study finds that efforts to raise awareness of the lack of women in STEM are actually making women feel more out of place. Indiana University professor of psychology, Evava Pietri, conducted the study titled, Addressing the Unintended Consequences of Gender Diversity Interventions on Women's Sense of Belonging in STEM. It was published on August 17th in the journal Sex Roles. Though researchers have previously theorized that STEM intervention efforts may backfire, this is the first study to use an experimental approach to illustrate, under laboratory conditions, how women in STEM advocacy may be backfiring. To do this, Pietri recruited 585 participants to watch videos on the STEM gender gap. Half of the participants watched videos depicting conversations between professors and students about the disparity, and each conversation was inspired by a specific research article. The rest of the participants watched a set of interviews with a male psychology professor describing how research on the STEM disparity is conducted. Unsurprisingly, the videos were effective in raising participants' bias literacy, the videos were effective, or their ability to articulate various ways in which women are subjected to bias in STEM. But the educational videos also had a downside. The videos increased awareness of gender bias in the sciences, which led women, but not men, to ultimately experience decreased anticipated belonging and trust, and increased negative effect and stereotype threat concerns about the STEM organization. Moreover, for women, awareness of gender bias in the sciences was the mechanism underscoring their enhanced social identity threat. Pietri, I can't pronounce that, and her fellow researchers explained. Moving forward, the researchers call for women in STEM advocates to be diligent in investigating the possibility of unintended negative outcomes before trying to get more women into STEM. Further, they cast doubt over whether these programs should be created in the first place. If diversity interventions, such as the one using the experiment, have negative consequences on women's sense of belonging in STEM, should women even be exposed to them in the first place? Perhaps the risks associated with social identity threat are not worth the benefits of increased bias, literacy, and reduced gender bias, they add. Professors from Purdue University, Yale University, Skidmore College, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison assisted with research in the study. There's something really interesting about all of these attempts at diversity. You may have seen, I made a couple of videos where I talk about how diversity can be a good thing. It just depends on the type of diversity. One of the issues, though, is that people only look at the surface level. They say something simple like, hey, there's not enough women at this company. I got an idea. Let's make a law that they have to hire women. But that's not actually going to solve your problem. It's going to do a bunch of bad things, and it's not going to, here's what you want. You want skilled, talented women to work in these fields, right? Well, first of all, they have to choose to do it. And if they don't choose to do it, you're not going to have it. What do you think's going to happen if you take a bunch of women and say, we want you to work in STEM, but everyone's going to be biased against you? They're going to be like, I'm going to go work somewhere where I'll be more comfortable. And you could probably reduce the amount of women in STEM. And that actually might be true. Let me see if I have the article here. So, this is from earlier this year. A gender equality paradox: countries with more gender equality have fewer female STEM grads. Okay? And this might be due to the study we just read, or it could just be when given a choice, women don't go into these fields. Maybe women are being pressured to go into these fields in the first place. Well, I don't know. Countries with greater gender equality see a smaller proportion of women taking degrees in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, a new study has found. Dubbed the gender equality paradox, the research found that countries such as Albania and Algeria have a greater percentage of women amongst their STEM graduates than countries lauded for their high levels of gender equality, such as Finland, Norway, and Sweden. The researchers from Leeds Beckett University and the University of Missouri, why did I say Missouri, believe this might be because countries with less gender equality often have little welfare support, making the choice of a relatively high-paid STEM career more attractive. The study, published in Psychology Science, also examined what motivates girls and boys to study STEM subjects, including overall ability, interest, or enjoyment in the subject, and whether science subjects were a personal academic strength. So they talk about, I'm not sure I care about the methodology. They use data on 475,000 teenagers across 67 countries or region for the study. That's huge. That's actually really massive. They found that while boys and girls' achievements in STEM subjects were broadly similar, science was more likely to be boys' best subject. Girls, even with their ability in science equaled or excelled that of boys, were often likely to be better overall in reading comprehensions, which relates to higher ability in non-STEM subjects. This fits most of our preconceptions, that men are better with logic and science and women are better with social and literal. And then we see that deviation in choice. Here's the other thing. If it is true that men and women naturally, move in these directions, of course women are going to decide to take non-STEM roles if they're better at it. Look at it this way. If this study, what they're saying is true, right? We're looking at this research, they can say it's true. If women are better at literal subjects, and you come on and say, which job do you want? They're going to be like, well, I'm really good at this, I'm going to go do that. Maybe they're also really good at it because they enjoy it. And this is one of the problems. A lot of people who don't think there's actually any biological differences between men and women, and I would say that, for one, you can't conclude definitively one way or another, but evidence suggests yes. Men and women, mentally and from personality-wise, are different. We saw the study from James Damore that men prefer to systemize, women prefer to empathize, and this is once again seen. You would expect the results of this data that even when women are good at something, when they're good at STEM, they don't take these jobs. Girls also tended to register a lower interest in science subjects. These differences were near universal across all the countries and regions studied. Professor of psychology Gisbert Stowett said this could explain some of the gender disparity in STEM participation. The further you get in secondary and higher education, the more subjects you need to drop until you end with just one. We are inclined to choose what we are best at and also enjoy. This makes sense and matches common school advice. Girls studying STEM. So the research then looked at how many girls might be expected to choose to further study STEM-based areas on the criteria. They took the number of girls in each country who had the necessary ability in STEM and for whom it was also their best subject and compared this to the number of women graduating in STEM. The results show that there is a disparity in all countries, but with the gap once again larger in more gender equal countries. Listen, the data is showing us this. If you are a social justice advocate feminist in the US and you want more women in STEM, the last thing you want then are these kinds of gender diversity programs and language. Because what we're seeing from this study is that when you ram it down someone's throat that there's bias and that people are going to be, biased against you, you make people not want to go there. Look, if you came to me and said, Tim, how would you like to go work at this office? By the way, they're all far left communists and they're going to hate you. I'd be like, yeah, I'm not going to go work there. But if you just said, hey, here's a company, they want to produce media, I'd probably go work there. Actually, Fusion's a really good example of this. Before I joined Fusion, they said, we want to do on-the-ground documentary like what you're doing with Vice. We want you to recreate that here. I said, deal. Then I got there and found out Fusion was just far lefty, socialist, DSA types. social justice warriors, aggressive authoritarian types. And I was like, if you told me this before coming here, I wouldn't have come. And that's what I think we're seeing. But it also is fair that if there really is going to be animosity and bias against these women, then maybe they do deserve some kind of warning. At the very least, outside of what people are being told and how they're behaving, we can see the study from earlier this year that the more you create choice and equality, the less likely you are to see women in these jobs. And that is, at least according to this massive study of 475,000 people in 67 countries, I believe that's the evidence we should use when making our decisions. So look, it seems like they're calling it a paradox. The harder you try to make something happen, the less likely it will be because you're doing it wrong. You need to reassess what you're doing and change it. Anyway, I'm gonna get out of here. Thanks for hanging out. Stick around because I got more videos on my main channel starting tomorrow at 4, and I'll see you then.